protest. Why was there a great protest? Because kafalem harkegigis. Why did there have to be a kafalem harkegigis by Matan Torah? Because since all the Giluim that took place up till then was a revelation from above, and therefore, on the one hand, to be able to reach the great secret of the advantages of action, which is the Maila of the Yidden over the Avos, which the Matan Torah over the Avos was the Maila of Maisa Hu Ha'ikar. That's why the Yidden said Naisa before Nishma. They said we will do, seeing the Maila of doing over understanding, over learning. And that was the Maila that was called a Roz. It's a great secret that who revealed to my children this secret. And this was, they reached it because of the fact that they were working ba'avodah kasha b'chaymer b'alvainim. But still in all, we said, even though they reached it through the avodah of b'chaymer b'alvainim, they still in all needed to have from above a revelation that should bring it down by them. That they should be able to have an appreciation of what took place after Matan Torah and what was going to be an influence through Matan Torah, that El Yoinim Yedu Tachtoinim Yal El Yoinim, the mile of action. So you needed to have the Kafalem Harkegigis. So ultimately, that Kafalem Harkegigis, that Hashem held a mountain over them and brought them to the state of recognition of action over understanding, over learning, still is something that's coming from above, and that's why it's my daughter Avala Raisa. But when the Yidden had the state of Bittel, and that they were called Yehudim. Why are they called Yehudim? Even Mordechai that was shaved Binyamin and all the rest of the Yidden that were there were called specifically by the name Yehudi to indicate that they had their Bittel, they had their Kaifer, Ba'avodah Zarah, that's Moide B'chal Torah Kula, and therefore he was the level of this. This brought about the Momata Lamaila, as we're soon going to explain. And we said that Mordechai Tzaddik was called Ish Yehudi, that he was the ruler, he was in control of the Yehudi, of being in control of the bittul to the Eibishter, the acceptance of the Eibishter, and that's why Mordechai lo yichra v'lo yishtachve. So now he's going to go on further and explain that this is the idea that we were talking about, that the whole Klal Yisrael was in such a state of Esrus Dolasato that they were standing in almost an entire year in a state of Mesiris Nefesh, that it was Yom Echad, that the Echad shone down them in a way of Yom. So we're holding, like I said, on page 5, about a third of the way down the page, the beginning of the line. The line begins, V'tam Hadover. V'tam Hadover, the reason for this is that they had this type of bittul, and they were willing to stand in Mesiris Nefesh for the entire year, or almost an entire year. It says that Haman was upset because they wanted to kill the whole entire nation, because when he saw that Mordechai would not bow down, so he decided that they told him who Mordechai's nation was, and they told him who the nation was. What's the idea of Am Mordechai? Hainum Shekola Amma B'Maim Matzav Shnikroim B'Shem Am Mordechai. The entire nation, the entire Jewish people were in a state and situation that they were called the nation of Mordechai. And what did Mordechai represent? Like we said before, Shein Yoni Haya Ish Yehudi. What is the idea of Ish Yehudi? Ish is from the word Balabas. He owns it. He's in control of it. Balabayis ala inyan, the Yehudi. He was in control and owning the idea of Yehudi. Shezau inam sirs nefesh al Yiddishkeit. That was the self-sacrifice he had for Yiddishkeit. But Pashtus, and simply put, Bli habeit ala gzeira shoyser rak ala Yehudim umnei yosim Yehudim. That regardless of the fact that the decree was only against Jews, and the decree was because they were Jews. So which means that they had an out. As long as they would give up their Yiddishkeit, they wouldn't have been under the decree. Still, in all that they stood in a state of self-sacrifice. They were willing to give up their lives. They weren't going to they weren't going to lose and give up on their Yiddishkeit. Even in thought, no foreign thought came into their mind. Meaning that they didn't even consider doing and leaving their Yiddishkeit and bowing down to Avodah Zarah. So now this is how the miracle of Purim concluded Matan Torah. V'lechein nasa oz siyum agbar v'kiyum in the Matan Torah mitzad isarus adolesata bolvad. So now became the conclusion and the establishment of the idea of Matan Torah as a result of the inspiration from below alone. Through that was nullified the great protest for the Torah, meaning the protest that was done under duress, like we said before, because the beginning of Matan Torah was in a way of an inspiration from above. And now that was nullified because we accepted it on it ourselves during the time of Purim. Through the miracle of Purim, it became now, or through what the Yidden withstood by Purim, and through their choices by Purim, their self-sacrifice, became a total change of the below. That's the true idea of inspiration from below, an awakening from below, is to have the below change. Like by Matan Torah, not like by Matan Torah. Though from all four directions and from top and bottom, the voice came out by Matan Torah and said, I should not have any other gods. So seemingly there was an impact, and it influenced the world. It permeated the world to such a degree. Still in all when the shofar blew, then they knew that they are now permitted to go up into the mountain. One would think, you had such a great revelation by Matan Torah, the mountain should have become permeated with that holiness, but it wasn't that way. The mountain now became just a regular mountain. So the great revelation, even though it came from all over, permeated the entire world, it didn't remain. So then down here below it remained the way it was prior to the giving of the Torah. Therefore, one had to begin to do the avoid of refining the sparks. So it was only a beginning of dealing with the mata. The mata was not really affected yet. So he says in Nois Hey, V'zel Gamatam. That's the reason that specifically the days of Purim are days of partying and rejoicing. Why is that so? When you talk about a party, you talk about happiness, that has to do with something that's revealed. It's something that's connected with the physical. That's why the Chazal say that the rejoicing must be done only with eating meat and must be done only with wine, because it has to be it has to permeate and has to deal with the physical realm. Since there's a combination of the physical and the spiritual. In other words, you have this great revelation from above, but it's permeating the physical. Top of page 10. The joy becomes in such a way of without boundaries, beyond any type of measure and boundary, even beyond the boundaries of Torah, in a way that he doesn't know the difference between Arer Haman and Baruch Mordechai. As far as Torah is concerned, you look in Torah, you know that Haman is supposed to be cursed. You look in Torah, you know that Mordechai is supposed to get the bracha. But here, because it's a joining of the Gashmis and the Ruchnis, and we know to be able to join such opposites together, the Gashmis and the Ruchnis, you need to have something that's completely without boundaries, without limitations. So therefore, it manifests itself as well that the Simcha is in such a way without any boundaries, even of Torah. Like my Simchas Hamoedim Shibag Bala, not like the joy of Yom Tovim. That does have limitations that they would send, like we mentioned before, the Bezdin would send out shluchim when it came to other Yom Tovim to ensure that the Simcha was kept in check. Why was that? Spiritually, they were in a state of beyond knowledge, beyond limitation, and therefore it was able to permeate the physical to such a degree. This is also connected with the lottery aspect of Purim. The entire Yom Tov of Purim is called by the name of the lottery. That is the lottery. Only with a lottery, the land will be divided, which is really very strange if you think about it. That in the whole story of Purim, the idea that the way Haman chose to destroy the Jewish people was by consulting a lottery to determine the date. He didn't even use the lottery to consult if he should destroy the Jewish people. He used the lottery just to find out when. So seemingly, it's really a minor detail in the entire story of Purim, and yet that's the name that we call it. The Shmaya Sheyikroloi B'Lashon HaKodesh, the name that something is called in Lashon Kodesh, is the entire life force. Why is the lottery so significant and so important? Like it's explained at length in Amarim on these psukim, in such a manner, from the pur, which is the lottery, which is in a singular. It says, why is it called Purim? Al Shem HaPur. So the Megillah says there was one lottery. But from that singular lottery, Nasim Purim Lashon Rabim, it became Purim in the plural. And he gives an example of where we see lotteries in more than the singular, similar to the two lotteries that were held on Yom Kippur about which goat would be offered inside the Beis HaMikdash and which goat would be sent to Azazel. Kippurim is like Purim. That's why there's a letter Chaf of similarity. Just like Purim is, like it's brought down to Kundi Zohar. Hainu, this means to say, the main things in Purim. So you have the plurality in Purim that Yom Kippur is mimicking that plurality. So what does that mean? What is the plural of lotteries by Purim? Hainu, Pur de l'umaza, the Haman, Pur de Kedusha. There is the lottery of the opposite, which is Haman, and there's the lottery of Kedusha. How come? Why is there also a lottery of Kedusha? Since we transform and we turn around the idea of that Haman is cursed to Mordechai being blessed, until we do not know the difference between Haman being cursed and Mordechai being gebenched. Despite that, so you say there's no difference, so then maybe that means that the hashpah that's going to come from above is going to go anywhere. It's going to go to Klip, it's going to go to Kedusha, it can go to Haman, it can go to Mordechai. No, the point is that it's, even though it's such a high level that seemingly does not show or know of any distinction between them or any advantage of one over the other, still in all the Hamshach goes to the right place. It goes dafke to Mordechai and not to Haman. But to such a degree, Shabbeis Haman it in Mordechai, the house of Haman is given to Mordechai. For Yehudim Maisa Oira, Zutayra to Yidden, there was light, which the Chazal says is going on Torah. V'simcha is a Yom Tov, joy is going on Yom Tov, like we know, Moedim V'simcha. And V'sasan Zumila, we know that Sasan, the Chazal learn out, has to do with the Bris Milah, V'yikar, That's Elut Tefillin. Tefillin gives the glory to the person. That's why Cheskel Novi was told about the removal of the glory on his head. Until it was the literal physical idea of light and joy and happiness and glory in the simple sense, not just in the medrash sense that's talking about Torah and Tefillin and so on. From the avoid of the days of Purim, and then the joy is to such a degree that we don't know we're breaking through all boundaries. Joy in general, its nature is, like we always bring down Chassidus, breaks through all definitions and measurements and limitations. How much more does a joy without bounds, ad lo yada, how much more does it break through barriers? So through that, Navi B'karim Mamish L'kiyim in the Mismach Gula Purim L'Pesach, which will come speedily to the fulfillment of what it says in the Gemara, that one redemption is brought close to the other redemption, which the simple meaning in the Gemara, it's talking about that Purim is made in the other, it's close to Pesach when it's two others. But in the spiritual sense, the Rebbe is saying that we should have the Geula of Purim bring right away to the Geula of Mashiach. Okay, mate says and the flows like your days going on the land of Mitzrayim. I will teach. I will show you wonders. Then they will study the teachings in the Torah of Mashiach. Though Matan Torah will not be again, like it's the well-known expression brought down in Chassidus, the Kol Mokum still no Yitvas B'Zeh Ad L'Oifen Shah Torah Shloim Hazeh Hevel Ulgavet Rosh Mashiach. It'll be added to such a degree that the Torah of this world, the Torah that we have up till now, the Torah we got since Har Sinai and everything that's been revealed since then, will be considered like nothing, like air, in comparison to the Torah of Mashiach. That's how high it is. So even on the one hand, Matan Torah is a one-time event, nothing like it, but it's incomparable. Our Torah now, L'gam Torah Mashiach, v'dafke hu yilamed Torah skol that specifically Mashiach will teach Torah to the entire nation, mikotnam ad godlam, from the most minor to the most greatest. Bedugum samer leil ba'avodah of Purim, like we said earlier in the avodah of Purim, in Ois Dalet, that it's about all Yidden stood in the same level, the bittul of the essential state of the Yid. All this will be in our measure of time soon. With kindness and mercy, in the true and complete redemption through Mashiach.